Dear students, welcome to the episode on impact of cultural tourism. Tourism has ample potential to bring about changes in the economic, ecological, social and cultural aspects of a country. The twin market forces of supply and demand interact to produce the pattern of tourism, which are known as spiral and temporal incidents of tourism and outdoor recreation. These patterns have related economic, socio-cultural, environmental and ecological impacts. It is to be remembered that tourism has come up as a decisive link in gearing up the speed of socio-economic development. Hence, those socio-cultural impacts are analyzed in this episode. In this episode on the impact of cultural tourism, the main objective of learning has been presented under 5 broad categories. They are positive impacts of tourism, negative impacts of tourism, environmental impact, impact of pollution, impact of ecosystem. Introduction. Tourism is one of the most vibrant and economically advantageous activity. It has wide cultural and social effects. Tourists not only bring money to a region but also carry along with them strong and visible lifestyle, dress code, food habits which form an emotional attachment to it. The influx of tourists, however small, will bring some impact on the host country. This kind of visitors does not produce noticeable negative impact. On the other hand, if the tourists are not bothered about the people in the destination nor have any interest in the culture and heritage, and if they come in large numbers, certainly they cause damage to the destination. Socio-cultural impact. Tourism impacts are both positive and negative. Some positive aspects are exchange of cultural information, preservation and conservation of hosts' cultural heritage and encouraging local crafts, customs and traditions. On the other hand, there are negative impacts also. Demonstration effect. There is a possibility of demonstration effect, that is, people with lower income try to copy the lifestyle of the people. This leads to waste of money and degradation of culture. The negative impact may arise out of ill-planned and ill-managed tourism development. The positive social impacts arise when tourism serves as a bridge between people, fostering communication, mutual understanding and desirable redistributions of wealth. In many cases, tourism promotion efforts are negative in its impact on non-economic front, making it non-sustainable and self-deflating in the long run. Further, placing local arts and crafts in hotel lobbies, guest rooms and restaurants increases the demand for them. In this way, the dying local arts and crafts have been rejuvenated. The growth of the cottage industry has helped the economies of the depressed regions. The new employments generated by enhanced activity will result in social changes. The provision of advanced communication and transport catalyzes the process. These can be considered as an indirect socio-cultural impacts. Impact of tourism in India. Tourism industry in India has several positive and negative impacts on the economy and society. These impacts are highlighted below. Positive impacts of tourism. One should remember the fact that tourism has brought to the culture of many countries several benefits. It has led to the situation in which not only the locals have widened their horizons, but there is a regeneration in awareness and pride in their culture and tradition among the population. Revival of interest. Tourism has led to the revival of interest in tribal customs and local cuisines in developing countries. The effect of tourism on the art of region also are to be taken into consideration. The favorable impacts are found in the case of art of pottery, weaving, embroidery, jewelry, glasswork, textiles, folk dance and music. In these areas, not only a revival has taken place, but also there has been the development of new art forms and styles and adoption of traditional ones. Generating income and employment. Tourism in India has emerged as an instrument of income and employment generation, poverty alleviation, and sustainable human development. It contributes to 6.23% to the national GDP and 8.78% of the total employment in India. Almost 20 million people are now working in the India's tourism industry. Source of foreign exchange earnings. Tourism is an important source of foreign exchange earnings in India. This has a favorable impact on the balance of payment of the country. The tourism industry in India generated about $100 billion in 2008. This is expected to increase to $275.5 billion by 2018 at a 9.5% annual growth rate. Preservation of national heritage and environment. Tourism helps to preserve several places which are of historical importance by declaring them as heritage sites. For instance, the Taj Mahal, the Qutub Minar, Ajanta and Ellora and Brihadishwara temples, etc. would have been decayed and destroyed had it not been for the efforts taken by tourism department to preserve them. Likewise, tourism also helps in conserving the natural habitats of many endangered species. Developing infrastructure. Tourism tends to encourage the development of multiple use infrastructure that benefits the host community. This includes various means of transports, healthcare facilities and sports centers in addition to the hotels and high-end restaurants that cater to foreign visitors. The development of infrastructure has in turn induced the development of other directly productive activities. Promoting peace and stability. The tourism industry can also help promote peace and stability in developing countries like India by providing jobs, generating income, diversifying the economy, protecting the environment, and promoting cross-cultural awareness. However, key challenges like adoption of regulatory frameworks, mechanisms to reduce crime and corruption, etc. must be addressed if peace-enhancing benefits from this industry are to be realized. Positive impacts of tourism are: enhance the amenity of a region, build community pride, enhance the sense of identity of community, support the community economy, provide new employment opportunities, maintain community stability and broaden community horizons. Negative impacts. Undesirable social and cultural change. Tourism sometimes led to the destruction of the social fabric of a community. The more tourists coming into the place, the more perceived risk of that place losing its identity. A good example is Goa. From the late 60s to the early 80s, when the hippie culture was at its height, Goa was a heaven for such hippies. Here they came in thousands and changed the whole culture of the state, leading to rise in the use of drugs, prostitution and human trafficking. This had ripple effect on the country. Increased tension and hostility. Tourism can increase tension, hostility and suspicion between the tourists and the local communities when there is no respect and understanding for each other's culture and way of life. This may further lead to violence and other crimes committed against the tourists. Creating a sense of antipathy. Tourism brought a little benefit to the local community. In most of all-inclusive package tours, more than 80% of travelers' fees go to airlines, hotels and other international companies and not to local businessmen and workers. Moreover, large hotel chain restaurants often import food to satisfy foreign visitors and rarely employ local staff for senior management positions, preventing local farmers and workers from reaping the benefit of their presence. This has often created a sense of antipathy toward the tourists and the government. Adverse effects on environment and ecology. One of the most important adverse effects of tourism on the environment is increased pressure on the carrying capacity of the ecosystem in each tourist locality. Increased transport and construction activities led to large-scale deforestation and destabilization of natural landforms, while increased tourist flow led to the increase in social waste dumping as well as depletion of water and fuel resources. Flow of tourists to ecologically sensitive areas resulted in destruction of rare and endangered species due to trampling, killing, disturbance of breeding habitats. Noise pollution from vehicles and public address systems, water pollution, vehicular emissions, untreated sewage, etc. also have direct effects on biodiversity, ambient environment and general profile of tourist spots. Environmental impact of tourism in India. The tourism industry in India can have several positive and negative impacts on environment. Now let me highlight them. Positive impacts. Direct financial contributions. Tourism can contribute directly to the conservation of sensitive areas and habitat. Revenue from park entrance fees and similar sources can be allocated specifically to pay for the protection and management of environmentally sensitive areas. Special fees for park operations or conservation activities can be collected from tourists or tour operators. Contributions to government revenues. The Indian government through the tourism department also collect money in more far-reaching and indirect ways that are not linked to specific parks or conservation areas. User fees, income taxes, taxes on sales or rental of the recreational equipment, and license fee for activities such as rafting and fishing can provide governments with the funds needed to manage natural resources. Such funds can be used for overall conservation programs and activities such as park ranger salaries and park maintenance. Improved environmental management and planning. Sound environmental management of tourism facilities and especially hotels can increase the benefits to natural environment. By planning early for tourism development, damaging the expensive mistakes can be prevented, thus avoiding the gradual deterioration of environmental assets significant to tourism. The development of tourism has moved the Indian government towards this direction, leading to improved environmental management. Rising environmental awareness. Tourism has the potential to increase public appreciation of the environment and to spread awareness of environmental problems when it brings people into closer contact with nature and the environment. This confrontation heightens the awareness of the value of nature among the community and lead to environmentally conscious behavior and activities to preserve the environment. Negative impacts. Depletion of natural resources. Tourism development can put pressure on natural resources when it increases consumption in areas where resources are already scarce. Water resources. Water, especially fresh water, is one of the most critical natural resources. The tourism industry generally overuses water resources for hotels, swimming pools, golf courses and personal use of water by tourists. This can result in water shortages and degradation of water supplies as well as generating a greater volume of wastewater. In drier regions like Rajasthan, the issue of water scarcity is one of the popular concerns. Local resources. Tourism can create great pressure on local resources like energy, food and other raw materials that may already be in short supply. Greater extraction and transport of these resources exacerbate and physical impacts associated with their exploitation. Because of the seasonal character of the industry, many destinations have 10 times more inhabitants in the high season than in the low season. A high demand is placed upon these expectations of the tourists. Land degradation. Important land resources include minerals, fossil fuels, fertile soil, forests, wetlands, and wildlife. Increased construction of tourism and recreational facilities has increased the pressure on these resources and on scenic landscapes. Direct impact on natural resources, both renewable and non-renewable, in the provision of tourist facility is caused by the use of land for accommodation and other infrastructure provision and the use of building materials. Forests often suffer negative impacts of tourism in the form of deforestation caused by fuel wood collection and land clearing. For example, the trekking in Himalayan region, Sikkim and Assam. Impact of pollution. Tourism can cause the same forms of pollution as any other industry. They are air emissions, noise, solid waste and littering, releases of sewage, oil and chemicals, even architectural or visual pollution. Air and noise pollution. Transport by air, road and rail is continuously increasing in response to the rising number of tourist activities in India. Transport emissions and emissions from energy production and use are linked to acid rain, global warming and photochemical pollution. Air pollution from tourist transportation has impacts on the global level, especially from carbon dioxide emissions related to transportation energy use, and it can contribute to several local air pollution. Some of these impacts are quite specific to tourist activities where the sites are in remote areas like Ajanta and Ellora temples. For example, tour buses often leave their motors running for hours while the tourists go out for an excursion because they want to return to a comfortably air-conditioned bus. Noise pollution from airplanes, cars and buses as well as recreational vehicles is an ever-growing problem of modern life. In addition to causing annoyance, stress and even hearing loss for humans, it causes distress to wildlife, especially in sensitive areas. Solid waste and littering. In areas with high concentrations of tourist activities and appealing natural attractions, waste disposal is a serious problem. Improper disposal can be a major despoiler of the natural environment, rivers, scenic areas and roadsides. In mountain areas of the Himalayas and Darjeeling, trekking tourists generate a great deal of waste. Tourists on expedition leave behind their garbage, oxygen cylinders and even camping equipment. Such practices degrade the environment, particularly in remote areas, because they have few garbage collection or disposal facilities. Sewage. Construction of hotels, recreation and other facilities often lead to increased sewage pollution. Wastewater has polluted seas and lakes surrounding tourist attractions, damaging the flora and fauna. Sewage runoff causes serious damage to coral reefs because it stimulates the growth of algae which cover the filter feeding corals, hindering their ability to survive. Changes in salinity and siltation can have wide-ranging impacts on coastal environments, and sewage pollution can threaten the health of humans and animals. Examples of such pollution can be seen in the coastal states of Goa, Kerala, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, etc. Impact on ecosystem. Destruction and alteration of ecosystem. An ecosystem is a geographic area including all the living organisms, their physical surroundings, and the natural cycles that sustain them. Attractive landscape sites such as sandy beaches in Goa, Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, lakes, riversides, and mountain tops and slopes are often transitional zones characterized by species-rich ecosystems. The threats to and pressure on these ecosystems are often severe because such places are very attractive to both tourists and developers. Habitat degraded. Moreover, habitat can be degraded by tourism leisure activities. For example, wildlife viewing can bring about stress for animals and alter their natural behavior when tourists come too close. Safaris and wildlife watching activities have a degrading effect on habitat as they often are accompanied by noise and commotion created by tourists. Other negative impacts. When poorly managed, tourism can have the following negative impacts: lead to cultural commodification, create a higher cost of living for residents, displace traditional residents, increase crime, undermine local traditions and ways of life, increase pollution and put pressure on services and facilities. Further, analysis shows that there is a close relationship between the volume of foreign tourism and the rate of fraud, robbery, kidnapping, and other crimes. Undesirable practices. In certain destinations, gambling is the core theme of tourism growth. In such areas, prostitution and organized crime often follow. To satisfy the tourists, all possible facilities are offered to them while the local residents are denied such facilities. This will result in further dissatisfaction, resentment, and irritation among the host community. Cultural crossbreeding. Generally, tourism implies an interaction between two groups, the hosts and guests, and an encounter between two cultures. This leads to regular crossbreeding of the cultures. The impact is often greater on the host environment. Since many tourists are satisfied in purchasing duplicates of original art pieces, machines replace handwork to produce cheap, large-scale models of the art pieces. Let us sum up. To avoid the negative impact of tourism, now the tourism planners are creating the vacation villages. There are yoga centers, spiritual centers, clubs and hotels, etc. This not only satisfies the needs of the tourists but also helps in restricting the movement of the tourists. In addition to offering sea, sun, room, board, companionship, these villages have started organizing special evenings, cultural outings, across the country discussions, conferences, music and libraries. In this way, tourism contributes to the mutual knowledge of man and to the development of sense of hospitality. It reduces the distance between the social classes and human races. This develops acceptability for closer ties and mutual understanding, leading to a socio-economic cultural interaction. If it happens successfully, then the dream of global community will be realized sooner or later. To conclude, tourism industry in India is making rapid strides. Tourism needs to be promoted more on professional way so that tourism in India may render help in preserving and sustaining the diversity of our country's natural and cultural environments. It should sustain and support the native cultures in the locations where it is operating. Since tourism is a multi-dimensional service industry, it is essential that all the wings of central and state governments, private sectors and voluntary organizations should serve and integrate themselves as active partners in their endeavor to attain sustainable growth in tourism. If India has to become a prominent world player in the arena of tourism industry. Thank you.